Okay. Hola, bienvenidos a otro episodio en mi canal. Hoy estoy unido con Ruby y estaremos hablando idiomas. In English, I was saying hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm joined by Ruby and we're going to be talking about languages. We're going to talk about our experiences in learning languages, and then hopefully Ruby's going to provide us with some tips. But before we delve into that, Ruby, can you briefly introduce yourself to the listeners?
Wow, can I just say I'm very impressed by your introduction?
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. We love a bilingual introduction.
Yay.
So yeah, like she mentioned, my name is Ruby. I am originally from Puerto Rico, which is a little island in the Caribbean. And then I moved to the States when I was 8. I've lived here most of my life. And like she said, I love languages. It is my jam. So I speak Spanish. That was my first language. Obviously, I'm fluent in English.
Yeah.
And then I'm currently learning Hindi.
Very nice. So like, what made you get into languages in general? What excited you about it?
Yeah, okay. So I went to India. I've always known that I have some sort of connection with India. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of, I think it was 2017, I really felt released to go. And so the doors opened up. I was able to go to India, fell in love. I felt like it was home, like I belonged there, like I was Indian in another life or something. But yeah, that made me really want to learn the language. And then I returned the next year by myself for 3 months. And I loved it, had the time of my life. And so that's really my main drive, to be able to speak the language of the people that I love.
That's really impressive. So like, when you went to India and you stayed for a bit, what was your process of actually trying to learn the language in itself? What did you do?
That's a good question. So I would say, honestly, it wasn't as easy as I thought, because a lot of people speak English in India. And all
Yeah.
the cities that I went to, that's one of the main languages. And so I really had to force myself to speak it.
Yeah.
I would say with most of my friends, they just spoke to me in English. But whenever I would go to like get fruit from the market or just engage with locals, that's really when I got to use what I've learned.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So if you're anything like me, I get really nervous when it comes to like actually speaking the language. So
Yeah.
how do you get past that?
Well, I think it's honestly putting yourself in a place where you need it to survive,
Yeah.
because I had no choice. You know, if I wanted to get a specific produce item or a specific shirt at the store, I really had to force myself to use it.
Yeah.
So really, it was just understanding that like I need it. There's no going around about it.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you've experienced this, but whenever somebody speaks my language to me, Spanish, right? And they make mistakes or have an accent, I've never looked at them any type of way. Like,
Yeah.
I've always seen it as a sign of bravery to be able to speak a language that's not your own. And so, yeah, I'm like, if I've never looked at anybody that way, I doubt anybody would do the same for me.
That's really good advice. And basically just try and get out of your head. That's what I tried to do. Because I like translate stuff in my head rather than just saying it in real time. And it slows me down a lot. And then I get more nervous. So maybe just go in and just say
And
what
you
you want.
speak great Spanish.
Oh,
Oh my
thank you.
gosh. I mean, we had multiple long hour conversations only in Spanish.
That is true. No, but that's down to your help. I appreciate that. So if you didn't know, Ricky actually used to tutor me in Spanish, and she was a really, really good tutor. So I appreciated her
Oh,
help. Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you, if there was like a number one tip for language learning, what would you say? What's your top tip?
my top tip. Okay, I would say find a way to make it as much fun as possible,
Yeah.
because the reality is language learning is hard. It's a very long-term process. It's not like a quick thing, you know? And a lot of people just think that, you know, going on an app for 10 minutes a day is going to get them fluency, but it's not.
Mhm.
And so I would say just try to find a way, whether it's like listening to music in that language and like translating it,
Mhm.
or watching a show in that language. Just try to make it as leisurely as possible. If you could
Yeah.
also find communities in your town that speak it. Like for
Mhm.
instance, I'm in the States, but there's like a Bollywood studio, a Bollywood dancing studio nearby. Obviously
Yeah.
that's where I'm gonna be, you know? And so
So
just
fun.
little pockets of where you can really use the language
Yeah.
in a real way.
Okay.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. So you said like learning, listening to shows, sorry, and also trying to listen to some music. Is there any
Oh,
Spanish shows or music that you could recommend that people could listen to?
Spanish shows. Okay, so it's funny because most of what I watch is actually Indian
Okay.
entertainment.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of Spanish shows. I do really enjoy this soap opera called La Niña. It's on
Okay.
Netflix. It's a
Mhm.
Colombian show, and I like it because Colombian accent is fairly neutral.
Yeah.
I would not recommend any type of Spaniard show unless that's the accent you're trying to acquire. Like for me, a native Spanish speaker, whenever I watch a Spaniard show,
Mhm.
for the first few episodes of the series, I have to put Spanish subtitles on
Oh
just for
no.
me to get used to the accent. And then, after the third or fourth episode, I take them off, but it is
Yeah.
just strong as can be.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think try to find a show that has the accent you're trying to acquire. If you're trying to acquire a Mexican accent, look for a
Yeah.
Mexican show and so on and so forth.
Awesome. So when it
Yeah.
comes to like when I first started to speak Spanish, I liked, as you said, the dialect from like South America. So I was just listening to different
Mm.
ones to find out like which ones I liked. I really like the Dominican accent. So would you say like if you're picking up slang, it's
Yeah.
a really nice accent.
Yeah, they're my cousins, basically. Our islands are right next to each other. We have a little feud. But
Mhm.
I would say the Dominican accent is the hardest accent out of all of them. Because
To
it's
understand,
phonetic
yeah.
quick. Yeah. So for sure. That's amazing.
Would you recommend like learning slang phrases or literally just learn formal Spanish, for example?
No. Never, never,
No.
never.
Hmm.
This is when getting a language tutor really comes in handy. I'm gonna give a little plug to italki, which is what
Hmm.
introduced us to each other. But
Yeah.
no, I'm not about the formal at all because the reality is I'm not gonna go to school in India, where I
True.
have to use a little bit more of proper language. Like I'm learning it because I want to be able to engage with locals and have
Hmm.
meaningful conversations with just everyday people. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I big time recommend slang, and no book is going to show you that. That's where shows really come in because you really get to see how people talk in the everyday.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Other than italki, I've used Duolingo before. What's your
Okay.
opinion on like, Duolingo? Because I know that they set like a limit of like maybe 10, 15 minutes a day, and that's not enough.
I
So
did not know that they have a
yeah.
limit. So, truthfully, I've only used Duolingo once, and let me tell
Okay.
you what I used it for. In the language learning community, it has a little bit of a notorious reputation for just not being very helpful, right? Because it'll be things like the girl had an apple.
Hmm.
My uncle's name is Bob. I'm like, what am I going to say that? And so I downloaded the app and I thought, I'm going to test myself. I'm going to put it in Italian, which is a language very similar to Spanish.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have it test me and see how far along I am. So I
Mm.
took a little test and I can't quite remember how they quantified it, but it told me that I'm like 70% fluent in Italian.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that is not the truth. I don't
Yeah.
know any Italian. I was just able to kind of guess a little bit here and there.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I can't say from my experience because that's the only time I've used it. But in
Yeah.
general, it has not the best reputation because it's just not very everyday language. I think it's something great to start off with, but
Mhm.
you're not going to get fluent using that app. Like I've never heard a success story of somebody only using Duolingo.
Mhm. And there's one more app that I want to talk about, and I was actually interested in buying it, but the price tag I wasn't too sure. It's
Okay.
Rosetta Stone. It was quite expensive. Do you think it's
Uh-huh.
worth the money?
So I have heard some people use Rosetta Stone. I think
Yeah.
that has a little bit of a better reputation, except for the fact that it's not very colloquial
Yeah.
language, right? And so, if that's what you're trying to learn, if you're trying to learn, let's say, business English, I don't know, obviously,
Hmm.
English, but
Yeah.
yeah, that would be something good. But to me, the price tag doesn't justify the results
Yeah.
because I have probably spent a total of, my gosh, $100 in my whole language learning journey.
Wow. Yeah.
And this has been over the past few years. And so you really don't need a whole lot.
Hmm. That's good advice, especially if people trying to save some money at the moment. So yeah, that's good to
Yeah,
know.
don't do it. Don't get Rosetta Stone.
Yeah. I got asked the other day by my mum actually, is there like a limit or an age limit to learning languages? Because obviously she's much older than me and she wants
Oh,
to pick up
sure.
Mandarin, so she doesn't know if it's too late.
Sick. That
Yeah.
is sick. Okay, definitely not. I think one advantage that us adults have is that we already have so many concepts of things. So I'll explain what I mean by that, right? If a child like I was when I first moved to the States, right, which by the way, side note, was a huge culture shock
Yeah.
because I thought previous to that moment that everyone in the world spoke Spanish.
Oh wow.
Moved. And then I started talking and I'm like, what's going on? I'm like,
Yeah.
what's not computing with you, you know? And so I very distinctly remember that time, right? So I had to learn, I was young, the
Yeah.
concepts of like what a shoe is, what is this, what is this, and then learn their translation. Whereas
Yeah.
for us, we already know, we have the database of all these words. We just have to learn how
Mhm.
to translate them over to the language. And so there is certainly no age limit at all. I think that adults have advantages that most people don't think about. And if you go
Mhm.
on YouTube, for example, and look up the language learning community, I mean, there is people that are 65, 70 that are for the first time learning their second language. And
Mhm.
so, oh my gosh, if there's a will, there's a way. I would always encourage somebody to learn another language if they want to, no matter how old they are.
Mhm. That's really good advice. I would definitely let her know what you said. It would encourage her for sure. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I wanted to ask as well. Do you ever dream in Spanish and or in Hindi, should I say? And is that a
I
good
dreamt in
way to
Hindi
say?
last night.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, because I did my Hindi lesson right before I went to bed. So that's typically when it happens. But let me tell you, it's the weirdest thing. I have dreamt in multiple languages that I don't speak. So
Wow.
normally, obviously, I dream in English because I
Yeah.
live in the States. You know, my husband is American. It's the language that I'm surrounded by the most.
Yeah.
And obviously, I dream in Spanish. It's my heart language. Dream in Hindi. I'm learning it. But I've had maybe 5 or 6 dreams where I'm speaking Khmer, which is the language in Cambodia. Never gone to
Oh
Cambodia.
wow.
Don't know a single word in Khmer, but I wake up the next day and I know that that's what I was speaking. It's the
Wow.
weirdest thing. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I have like something to pursue there in the
Yeah.
future.
Eyes over there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Is that a way to say? Is that a way that you know that you're getting really proficient in the Hindi side, or would you say not really?
Mm. They can be. Yeah, certainly. But like, I think before I had even gone to India and really started pursuing learning the language, I think I dreamt in Hindi. Did I know what I was saying? Did I know what other people were saying? No. But I think it's just a sign that like you're thinking about the language.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was watching at some point loads of YouTube videos to find out quicker ways to actually learn a language. And there were a
Okay.
few YouTube accounts that said that you should put headphones on and then listen to that language while you're sleeping because apparently you'll pick it up. Have
Oh,
you ever heard of
funny.
that before? Yeah.
I have heard of that. It's something that I've never really tried, but
Mhm.
I don't know if you're gonna just listen to something and wake up going blah blah blah. You know, I speak
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
However, I don't see why it would hurt
Mhm.
because oh my gosh, the subconscious brain is everything, right? And
Mhm.
so what you're picking up, even if you can't identify what
Mhm.
words are being said,
Yeah.
you can pick up the sounds, like the cadence of people's voices. And so a
Mhm.
lot of subconscious things that I'm sure would only benefit you.
Mhm. So you mentioned like sounds and cadences, and that's really important when it comes to actually trying to sound or imitate like a native speaker.
Yeah.
What would you do for those that are like struggling with certain sounds within a language? What could they do to perfect that?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
because I'm a pretty horrid at accents. Like
Mhm.
I can't even do a Spanish accent in English, and it's what I know.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people around me that are English second language, so they
Mhm.
have a very thick Spanish accent, and even them, I can't replicate it. For
Mhm.
me, I think I have it easy because a lot of language or a lot of sounds that exist in Hindi also do in my language, and so I got a little bit of a freebie there. I'm
Mhm.
not the best at it, but honestly, if you're like really set on doing that, I would just hire
Mhm.
an accent coach for like a month, and I'm
You
sure
can
that'll
do
help
that?
you then.
I've
Yeah,
never heard of an accent coach. That's so cool.
yeah, big time. Yeah, like right now, like she said earlier, I teach Spanish. I also teach English online, and I have some students that want to perfect their Puerto Rican accent. Like they've
Mhm.
learned a very neutral Spanish, but maybe they have Puerto Rican family or are gonna visit it or spend a year there, etc. And so yeah, I work with them on how to pronounce the words with Puerto Rican accent.
Wow. Okay,
Mm.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
email you
girl.
sometime soon to try and do that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Okay, you're someone who's like you're bilingual, so obviously you speak Spanish and you speak English as well. What have
Yeah.
your benefits been? Because obviously you've got the best of both worlds. Does your personality change when you speak one language over the other?
Yes. Yes. When I speak Spanish, oh my gosh, I'm bold. I'm like all up in your face, right? When I speak English, I'm a little more reserved because it's kind of
Mhm.
what we do here, you know.
Yeah.
But I definitely do think that personalities change. I don't know what my personality is in Hindi yet because I
Yeah.
think I'm still in like more the beginning stages because although I've been learning on and off for a few years.
Mhm.
And it's because I've moved around a ton. There's been a lot of really big life changes. COVID, I got married. And
Mhm.
so I recently, like very recently, like 3 weeks ago, started picking it up again. And I like
Yeah.
retaught myself how to read. And so I'm still in the early stages, but I'm interested to see what my personality in that language will be.
That's really cool.
Mhm. And then
What?
to answer your first question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I was just going back to that.
Advantages galore.
Hmm.
Yeah, so many advantages. I started to think about a recent trip. My husband and I went to Mexico City like a few
Hmm.
months back, right? And there were a few times where I went to a store and I wanted a specific item, right? And
Yeah.
so whenever I would ask them, I would say, you know, how much is this in Spanish?
Hmm.
And they would tell me an answer. And let's say if it was too much for me, I'd walk away and then I'd kind of be like, "Ugh, I wish I had said yes because I really want that item." So there was once where I sent my husband, doesn't speak Spanish, and I said, "Can you
Mhm.
go check to see how much it is?" And the lady started mine off at like 200 pesos and her starting bid with my husband was like 1,500 pesos.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so there's big advantages for being able to speak the language for
Yeah.
sure.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah.
That's that's a massive jump. Sorry.
It is.
Um, I would say, what is the hardest thing so far about learning languages, in your opinion, in your experience?
Hmm. Okay. I think that the hardest thing is that we live in a society where there is zero delayed gratification, you know? We just see so many things happen instantaneously and
Yeah.
this is a long game. It's a long game. It takes years to truly reach fluency.
Hmm.
Obviously you can get to a place where you can be conversational in just a few months and that's wonderful, but to
Yeah.
really master a language it takes a long time, and so you're constantly putting in work every single day and it's going to be a while before you see the fruition of that. And so I
Hmm.
would say it's just kind of sticking to the race and believing that ultimately you're going to see the result of everything that you're putting in. And I think honestly, that's also one of the most wonderful things about languages is that
Yeah.
it really stretches that muscle of just perseverance and continued effort because in our society, we just don't really have a lot of places where we value that.
That's so true. More than true.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you as well, have there been any really fun moments as a language tutor so far that you can share with us?
I think the funnest thing is how so many of my students have become friends. Like, I speak to so many people that live all around the world
Yeah.
that I know if I were ever to visit their country, I would have someone to go to. And
Hmm.
so that's been the best thing. It's just languages really bring people together. And literally, I have friends that I talk to on a weekly basis that I met teaching them Spanish, and now we're just friends.
Hmm. That's really nice. Have there been
Yeah.
any funny moments?
I mean, there's always funny moments. Oh my, like this past week, I was teaching Spanish to an American, right?
Hmm.
And he was telling me the story and he was saying, "Da, da, da, something mi hermoso, blah, 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 something mi hermoso." And I'm like, who is this hermoso? Who is this guy that's
Yeah.
beautiful to him? And so after he finished his little rant, I was like, te tengo que preguntar algo, you know, I have to ask you something. ¿Quién es tu hermoso? Who's your beautiful? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, he literally said it. He's like, oh, I meant hermano. He's like, oh
Oh.
my God, he's never gonna want to call them that, all this stuff. So yeah, there's so many funny moments of people saying
Yeah.
the wrong things. And so I'm glad that people don't take offense when I laugh. I have a very just easy
Yeah.
laugh and I never mean it offensive. I just think it's silly.
Do you want to know my most embarrassing moment so far?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I was talking to, there's a lady that I was speaking to on the street in Spanish, and then I was like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
I'm so embarrassed. Like, I have to keep stopping to think. And I was like, estoy embarazada. And she was like, oh, congratulations. I was like, huh? And then she's like, you know, you're saying you're pregnant, right? I was like, oh my goodness.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I learned that day. So
That's
yeah.
hilarious. I have a mistake I made while I was in India. So in the south of India, one way that they refer to like an elder person, an elder woman with respect, is that
Mhm.
they say the word like Akka, right? So they'll say her first name like Sushali Akka.
Mhm.
And I kept hearing them say that, and I'm like, okay, you just say that to people that are older than you to show respect.
Yeah.
And one day, like an Uber driver picked me up, and I kept calling him Alka, and then he kind of came back at me with like a little bit of attitude, and I was like,
Mhm.
he doesn't, I don't know,
Yeah.
like me to speak his language or something. And I found out that you only call that to women, and so I looked.
Oh.
He was not about it. He did not have a sense of humor about it, but it is what it is.
Oh, man. Sorry. It's nice, as you say, though, when people don't take offense to it or like they just laugh it off, because it makes you feel a lot better for like
Yeah.
butchering the language.
Yeah.
In your opinion, other than Hindi, like what is the nicest sounding language, would you say?
Nicest sounding language. God, I'm a sucker for Italian. I would love to learn Italian one day. I love how it sounds like a song to me. And so I think that, and I also love the way that Korean sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big Korean phase, like, a lot of people did. Like, they were big into K-pop and K-dramas. And one of my best friends actually lives in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love how it sounds. I think it's beautiful.
Do you watch K-dramas and stuff like that at the moment, or?
Yeah. At the moment, no, but would I right now? Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Another question.
Yeah.
Let's go through. Okay, you mentioned like one of the Romance languages, which is Italian. Do you think it's easier to learn another Romance language once you've known one, so like Spanish, for example? Or
Yes, it definitely makes it a lot easier, but it can also, it's a double-edged sword
Mhm.
because the words are so similar, you can very easily confuse between the two. But is it easier? Yes. I have
Yeah.
had full-blown conversations with Portuguese speakers where they have talked to me in Portuguese and I've responded in Spanish.
Wow.
We've had like an hour-long conversation just like that. And so, do I know any words in Portuguese? No, maybe one or two. But it was so similar that you are able to just cross language communicate very easily.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. I don't know about America, but in the UK, on our language curriculum for modern foreign languages, we have Chinese, Spanish, French, sometimes German.
Oh,
That's mostly it. Do you think
yeah.
that they should branch out to do like more Asian languages or languages that maybe aren't that widely spoken? What would you say?
I love that question. Holy cannoli. So it's pretty similar here with the exception of Mandarin.
Mhm.
We have Spanish is like a given. Every school in America is going to have that as a second language. And then French comes after that. And German was
Mhm.
actually what we learned a lot here too.
Cool.
And so, heck yes. Oh my gosh. I wonder though if there's even really going to be a lot of desire for people
Yeah.
to learn other languages. Like if the students are going to express a desire to learn Korean or something different or like an African language. But do I think it should be available? Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I think there's such a gap between the East and the West. And that's like the
Yeah.
most beautiful way to bridge it is to introduce the language because people in the East know English.
That's
Can't
true.
really say the same for us.
Hmm. I was speaking to someone actually about something to do with that the other day, about how sometimes when we go on holiday, for example, or not me personally, but a lot of Brits, for example, they would just expect everyone to know English. And I try when I go to somewhere new, even if it's just a few words, just to learn something in their language to show that I'm
Yeah.
trying. Yeah.
That's
What do you
a
think
big
about that?
pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's disrespectful,
Hmm.
honestly, to go to a different land and just assume that they're going to adjust to your level of comfort, what you know best, things like that. I think it's just a sign of really honoring the people that you're visiting to just learn a few words. And
Yeah,
it always means a lot to them. My goodness, it really does.
true. And
Mhm.
then last question, like what is your plans going forward with like language learning? Where do you want to be maybe in the next 5 years when it comes to languages?
I want to be in India. That
Yeah.
is a long-term goal is to move there. And so that would be it to just be able to know enough. I'm doing a lot of the preliminary work
Mm.
so that when I get there, I just have to learn how to maybe colloquialize everything that I've learned. But yeah, that's my long term goal is just to move there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
My long-term goal is to get more proficient in Spanish where I'm not like stuttering and like overthinking and stuff like that.
Oh
Like
my
I just
God.
want to have a conversation with people.
Oh, you right. I barely remember you stuttering whenever we did last. Barely. I mean, that introduction, that was fire, let me say.
Oh, thank you. All right. I want to thank you so much for your time and for like coming on and sharing your tips and experiences with everyone. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll have you again on the channel.
Yeah,
So
maybe we can speak in Spanish or Hindi
yeah.
next time.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
See you guys in the next episode.